All I wanted was to check out. Seriously, just coast through life, enjoying the kind of money you couldn't spend in 10 lifetimes. And on the very first day of my new life, I find a little girl on the street who looks like a porcelain doll. She hugs my leg, looks up with wide, tear-filled eyes, and calls me her buddy. The next second, 10 blacked-out Escalades block the entire street. An Ice Queen steps out a Rolls-Royce, her glare cold enough to flash freeze me solid. She's my ex-fiancée, the one from the arranged-for-business merger, who dumped me because I lacked ambition. She looks from me to her daughter, her perfect red lips parting to utter a single word, "Kidnapper." My name is Cole Anderson, and this is my second chance at life. In my last one, I burned myself out climbing the corporate ladder, ending up in the ICU at 35. The last thing I saw was the sterile white ceiling and a doctor shaking his head. When I opened my eyes again, I was in a parallel world, the sole heir to a massive fortune, also named Cole Anderson. My parents were chill. After I showed a talent for business that was frankly unnatural for my age, multiplying the family fortune by a factor of 50 and building a core team of loyal, terrifyingly competent executives, they happily retired to sail around the world. Before he left, my dad clapped me on the shoulder. "Son," he said, "money's just paper. We made enough. You got us here. Now it's your turn to just live. Do whatever the hell you want." I almost cried right there. Do whatever I want. The one thing my last life, my entire being, had been geared toward and failed to achieve. So I bundled up all my corporate duties and dumped them on my most capable subordinate, the man Wall Street called the apex predator, my executive assistant, Mr. Peterson. I gave him only 3 rules. 1. Don't bother me with small things. 2. Don't bother me with big things. 3. If the sky is falling, don't bother me. You guys handle it. And just like that, I began the life I'd always dreamed of. Total freedom. I wake up when I want, hit the gym, sample every Michelin star restaurant in the city, and when I'm bored, I brew my own whiskey. What more could a man ask for? Today was day 1 of my official retirement. I was wearing a hoodie and jeans, strolling down Fifth Avenue with a lollipop in my mouth, heading for a new high-end bistro I wanted to try. The sun was warm, the breeze was cool. In Bryant Park, pigeons strutted around and kids chased each other, laughing. I found an empty bench, sat down, and closed my eyes, soaking in the rare moment of peace. Suddenly, I felt a gentle tug on my jeans. I opened my eyes and looked down. A little girl, maybe 3 or 4 years old, was staring up at me. She was impossibly cute, like a doll, with huge eyes brimming with tears and long lashes clumped together. Her little nose twitched, and she looked like she was carrying the weight of the world on her tiny shoulders. She was wearing an expensive-looking princess dress, but there were no adults in sight. Lost. I took the lollipop out of my mouth and tried to look as non-threatening as possible. "Hey, kiddo, where are your mom and dad?" The little girl didn't speak. She just stared at me with those watery eyes, the tears threatening to spill over. My heart melted. Seriously, it was a weaponized level of cute. I dug into my pocket and pulled out a brand new, fruit-flavored lollipop, waving it in front of her. "Don't cry. Here, this is for you." Her eyes locked onto the candy, and her sobbing quieted. She reached out a chubby little hand, carefully took the lollipop but didn't open it. She just clutched it tightly. Then she did something I never expected. She let go of my pant leg, wrapped her arms around my calf, and gave it a tight squeeze. She rubbed her little head against my leg, her voice a tiny, milky whisper filled with a surprising amount of trust. "Buddy." The word was so quiet it was almost lost in the city noise. But I heard it, and I froze. That one word, buddy, was like a marshmallow hitting me right in the softest part of my soul. I was an orphan in my last life and an only child in this one. I'd never had anyone call me something so purely affectionate. I couldn't help myself. I reached down and gently stroked her soft hair. "Hey." The little girl seemed encouraged and hugged my leg even tighter. Just then, the screech of tires tore through the park's calm. I looked up, my eyes widening. 10 black Escalades had screeched to a halt at the edge of the park, blocking off half the street in a display of raw, arrogant power. The doors opened in unison, and a flood of men in black suits poured out. They moved with military precision, their presence instantly clearing a 50-foot radius around them. Onlookers scattered, staring in shock at a scene straight out of a movie. A bodyguard respectfully opened the rear door of the lead vehicle, a custom Rolls-Royce Phantom. A slender ankle in a black silk stiletto emerged first, followed by a tall, impossibly cool figure. The woman wore a perfectly tailored black power suit that did nothing to hide her stunning figure. Her dark hair was pulled back in a severe bun, revealing a flawless forehead and a neck like a swan's. Her face was aggressively beautiful, each feature so perfect it was almost inhuman. But her eyes were chips of ice, radiating a frosty distance and the casual authority of someone born to rule. The air temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees just from her presence. I looked at that familiar face, and a lazy smile on my own froze. Isabella Vance, the iron-fisted CEO of Vance Industries, the infamous ice queen of the business world, and my former fiancé from a dynastic merger she'd called off because I was a worthless playboy with no ambition. Her cold eyes scanned the park, and then, with pinpoint accuracy, they landed on me, and on the little girl clinging to my leg. When she saw the child, a flicker of panic and relief crossed her face. But when her gaze shifted to me, that flicker vanished, replaced by a bone-deep chill and undisguised contempt. She strode toward me, her heels clicking on the pavement like a death knell. She stopped 3 feet away, looking down at me as if I were something she'd scraped off her shoe. Then, her red lips parted, and her voice, as cold and hard as the rest of her, dropped 2 words. Kidnapper? The air solidified. The ring of bodyguards took a simultaneous step forward, their expressions promising a swift and brutal end if I made a wrong move. I almost laughed. Kidnapper? Isabella's imagination was as barren as ever. Then again, during our brief engagement, her image of me was pretty much set in stone. A lazy, good-for-nothing heir who mooched off his family's money. To be fair, I had cultivated that image carefully. It was the fastest way to get to my goal of doing absolutely nothing. And she, Isabella Vance, was the opposite. A prodigy, an Ivy League grad who took over her family's company at 20 and single-handedly turned a mid-tier firm into an industry titan. Her life philosophy consisted of 2 tenets: work and work harder. We were fundamentally different people. So when she called off the engagement, I hadn't even bothered to argue. I just waved goodbye. I never thought we'd meet again like this. Before I could say a word, the little girl attached to my leg spoke up. She looked up at the intimidating figure of Isabella, her little body trembling slightly, but she summoned her courage and piped up in her small, milky voice. He's not. He's my buddy. Isabella's body went rigid. She looked down at her daughter, and for the first time, I saw genuine shock and disbelief in those icy eyes. A female assistant behind her gasped, covering her mouth. Ms. Vance. Mia. She spoke. Isabella ignored the assistant, her eyes locked on her daughter, her voice trembling almost imperceptibly. Mia, what? What did you just say? The little girl, who I now knew was named Mia, seemed frightened by her mother's intensity. She shrank behind my leg, gripping my jeans even tighter, shaking her head without making another sound. Isabella's expression darkened. She looked back up at me, her gaze colder than before, now laced with suspicion and hostility. What did you do to her? I held up my hands, the picture of innocence. Do to her? I was sitting here enjoying the sun, and your daughter ran over and adopted my leg. Oh, right. I also gave her a lollipop. I waved my own half-eaten candy for emphasis. Isabella's gaze flickered to my lollipop, then to the one still clutched in her daughter's hand. Her brow furrowed. She couldn't seem to comprehend why her daughter, a child with severe social anxiety, who never let strangers near her, who hadn't spoken a word in over a year, would willingly approach a man who looked so utterly average. Mia, come on, mommy. Isabella tried to soften her tone, but years of command made it still sound like an order. Mia just buried her face deeper into my leg, like a frightened quail. Isabella's face hardened. The female assistant stepped forward, trying a gentler approach. Mia, sweetie, it's time to go home. Mommy was so worried. Mia didn't move, her grip on my leg ironclad. The situation was officially awkward. Every eye was on me, or more accurately, on my hijacked leg. I could feel Isabella's patience wearing thin. Her expression shifted from contempt to suspicion, and now to a deep, probing scrutiny. "What is it you really want?" she asked coldly. "Let's hear your price. If you think using my daughter is a way to get back into my family's orbit, you've made a serious miscalculation." I almost laughed out loud. Get into her family's orbit? Lady, do you have any idea who you're talking to? If I wasn't trying to fly under the radar, any one of my subsidiary companies could buy Vance Industries and liquidate it for spare parts. "Ms. Vance," I said, leaning back on the bench in a more comfortable position, "I think you're flattering yourself. I have zero interest in you or your family. The problem right now is that your daughter doesn't want to go with you." My words made her face turn livid. No one had ever dared to speak to her like that. Her chest heaved with anger, but seeing her daughter clinging to me for dear life, she choked it back down. She took a deep breath, as if making a monumental decision. A few seconds later, she spoke again, her voice laced with reluctance and humiliation. "I'm giving you an opportunity. Come with us. Mia needs an emotional support consultant. I'll pay you by the hour. Name your price." Emotional support consultant? I raised an eyebrow. "Ms. Vance, are you sure you don't just want to lure me somewhere quiet and have me disappear?" A flash of annoyance in her eyes told me I'd hit close to home, but she masked it well. "My methods are not that crude. I'm doing this for my daughter." She paused, then added, "If you can keep Mia in her current emotional state and willing to speak, I can offer you a long-term contract. Annual salary, 8 figures. After taxes, 8 figures. After taxes. Just to hang out with a kid?" The surrounding bodyguards and her assistant all looked stunned. That was more than most of the top executives at Vance Industries made in a year. I stroked my chin, giving the offer serious consideration. My life's goal was to do nothing. And what does that mean? It means getting maximum comfort for minimum effort. This emotional support consultant gig sounded like it was tailor-made for my grand plan. Big money, little work, low responsibility. The only downside was having to see Isabella's stone-cold face every day. But for that kind of money, and for this cute little kid, I could manage. "Deal," I said without missing a beat. Isabella seemed taken aback by how quickly I agreed. She hesitated for a second, then the contempt in her eyes deepened. In her mind, I was still the same useless bum who'd do anything for a buck. However, I added, "I have one condition. Speak. My work hours are my own. I come and go as I please. You can't interfere with my freedom," I said lazily. After all, inspiration doesn't just strike on a schedule. I'd successfully elevated babysitting to the level of artistic inspiration. Isabella's jaw twitched. The assistant looked at me like I was insane. After a long moment, Isabella ground out a single word through her teeth. "Fine." I smiled, satisfied. I bent down and patted Mia's little head. "Mia, right? Buddy's going to take you somewhere even more fun, okay?" Mia looked up, her big eyes filled with curiosity, but she nodded. "Then let's go." I took a tentative step. True to form, Mia moved with me, still attached to my leg like a little limpet. The scene was ridiculous. Isabella's expression grew even darker. Finally, I sighed and bent down, scooping Mia up into my arms. She was light and smelled faintly of milk and baby powder. She instinctively wrapped her arms around my neck and buried her face in my shoulder, looking completely content. Isabella watched this, her expression a chaotic mix of emotions. She would probably go to her grave, not understanding why her own daughter, the treasure she could never get close to, would be so affectionate with the one man she despised most in the world. And I knew this was just the beginning. "Isabella Vance, is your high and mighty worldview ready to be shattered?" Holding Mia, I walked calmly toward the Rolls-Royce Phantom, under the stunned gazes of everyone present. This new chapter of my retirement was shaping up to be more interesting than I'd expected. The back of the Rolls was spacious. Isabella and I sat on opposite sides, with Mia as a buffer in the middle. The little girl hadn't let go of me since getting in the car. She sat pressed against my side, her little hand clutching the hem of my hoodie like a kitten who'd finally found safety. Isabella sat across from me, arms crossed, face like a frozen lake. Her gaze was like a pair of scalpels, dissecting me, trying to figure me out. The atmosphere was so tense you could cut it with a knife. The driver and the assistant in the front seat didn't dare breathe too loudly. Cole. Isabella finally broke the silence, her voice dripping with ice. I expect you to understand your position. You're an employee. Do not entertain any foolish fantasies. She was warning me not to get any ideas about us rekindling things through her daughter. I couldn't be bothered to argue. I just looked down and tickled Mia under her chin. Hear that, Mia? Your mom says I'm just an employee. Mia looked from me to her mom, not understanding the word, but sensing the hostility in Isabella's tone. Her little lip jutted out, and she squeezed my arm tighter. Seeing her daughter's reaction, Isabella's brow furrowed, and she swallowed whatever sharp retort she'd been planning. It probably never occurred to her that she could be outmaneuvered by her own toddler. For someone used to being in complete control, the feeling must have been both novel and infuriating. I had to smile. The convoy moved smoothly, soon entering a high-security, ultra-exclusive gated community in Greenwich. The security here was even tighter than at my own empty mansion. The car stopped in front of a massive, modern villa. The architecture was minimalist and severe, all sharp lines and vast, cold glass windows that reflected the sky like ice, just like its owner. As we got out, a woman in her 50s wearing a housekeeper's uniform hurried out to meet us. Ms. Vanche, Mia, you're back. I was so worried when she saw me holding Mia. Her expression froze, her eyes filling with suspicion and confusion. Ms. Vance, this is Mrs. Gable, this is Mr. Anderson. He will be Mia's play tutor, Isabella said, settling on a relatively normal-sounding title. Play tutor, Mrs. Gable's suspicion only deepened. Isabella didn't elaborate. She just coldly told her to show Mr. Anderson to a guest room and swept into the house without a backward glance. I followed with Mia in my arms, Mrs. Gable trailing beside me, eyeing me like I was about to steal the silverware. The inside of the villa was even colder than the outside. A strict palette of black, white, and gray dominated the space. The furniture was all sharp angles, with virtually no decorative touches. It felt more like a modern art gallery than a home. I doubted there was a single throw pillow in the entire house. No wonder the poor kid was so withdrawn. Mr. Anderson, please follow me, Mrs. Gable said, her tone polite but distant. I nodded and followed her up to the second floor. The guest room was huge and fully equipped, decorated in the same joyless, minimalist style. If you need anything, please let me know. Dinner will be served at 7, Mrs. Gable said, then try to take Mia from my arms. Mia, sweetie, let's go wash up and get ready for dinner. But Mia clung to me like a koala, refusing to let go. Mrs. Gable looked awkwardly at me for help. How about I take her? I offered. She hesitated, then finally nodded, pointing down the hall. That's Mia's room. I carried Mia into her room. Unlike the rest of the house, this space was a fairy tale wonderland. Pink walls, a white princess canopy bed, a soft rug, and adorable stuffed animals everywhere. It was clear Isabella loved her daughter. She just had a terrible way of showing it. I helped Mia wash her hands and change into some comfortable clothes. The whole time, she was incredibly well-behaved, her big eyes never leaving my face. At 7 o'clock, we sat at a long, formal dining table. Me, Isabella, and Mia occupying 3 corners. 4 dishes and a soup were laid out, looking exquisite but smelling of nothing. Isabella gracefully picked up her knife and fork and began cutting into a filet mignon. Mia sat in her high chair, staring at a lump of unappetizing green vegetable puree on her plate. She poked at it with her spoon, but refused to eat. Mrs. Gable stood beside her, anxiously coaxing. Mia, sweetie, just one bite, please? The nutritionist made it just for you. Mia turned her head away, her lip pouting. Isabella stopped eating, frowning at her daughter. Mia, eat. Again the command. Mia's eyes immediately reddened. I sighed. This family, big and small, was exhausting. I put down my own fork and tasted one of the dishes. Just as I thought, bland enough to bore a rock. Mrs. Gable, could I borrow the kitchen? I asked. Mr. Anderson, for what? To make Mia something to eat, I said, standing up and heading for the kitchen without waiting for a reply. Isabella watched me go, a look of confusion and faint disdain on her face, but she didn't stop me. She probably thought a playboy like me, would just make a mess. The kitchen was enormous and state-of-the-art, with appliances so new they looked like they'd never been used. The walk-in fridge was stocked with an impressive array of top-tier organic ingredients. I rolled up my sleeves and tied on an apron. 10 minutes later, I walked out with a bowl of steaming, fragrant, perfect macaroni and cheese. The pasta was coated in a rich, creamy golden sauce with a perfectly toasted breadcrumb topping. The comforting aroma instantly banished the cold, sterile air of the dining room. Mia's little nose twitched. Her eyes lit up, locking onto the bowl in my hands. I placed the bowl in front of her, scooped up a small spoonful, blew on it, and held it to her lips. "Mia, try what Buddy made." Mia opened her mouth and took a bite. Her eyes went wide, sparkling like two black diamonds. She chewed, swallowed quickly, then pointed eagerly at the bowl, making little ah-ah sounds. I smiled and fed her another spoonful. In no time, the entire bowl was empty. After she was done, Mia licked her lips contentedly and, for the first time, gave me a huge, beaming smile. "Buddy," she said, her voice clear as a bell. "Yummy." The clear toddler's voice echoed through the dining room. "Mrs." Gable gasped, her eyes welling up. And across from me, Isabella was completely frozen. Her hand, holding her fork, was suspended in midair. Her perpetually icy face had, for the first time, developed a crack. She stared at her happy, satisfied daughter, then at me, her expression a tangled web of shock, disbelief, and confusion. I gave her a little smile, picked up my fork, and took a bite of the sad-looking steak on her plate. I chewed it, swallowed without changing expression, and delivered my verdict. "Ms. Vance, your steak isn't as good as my mac and cheese." In that moment, I saw the corner of Isabella's mouth twitch violently. That night, Isabella barely touched her gourmet dinner. Her eyes kept drifting over to me and Mia, who was now happily hiccuping in my lap. Her gaze was no longer just disdainful. It was laced with a complex emotion I couldn't quite decipher. After dinner, citing work requirements, I took over the task of reading Mia her bedtime story. In her room, I sat cross-legged on the soft carpet, holding the little girl in my lap, and read The Little Prince in my softest voice. Mia listened intently, her head resting on my chest, her breathing growing slow and even. As I read the part about the prince leaving the fox, I felt a warm drop land on the back of my hand. I looked down. The little girl had fallen asleep, a single, glistening tear clinging to her long eyelashes. I gently carried her to her bed and tucked her in. As I was about to leave, the door creaked open. Isabella was standing in the doorway. She'd changed out of her severe suit and into a gray silk pajama set. With her long hair down, she looked less like a CEO and more human. She just stood there, watching her sleeping daughter, her expression softer than I'd ever seen it. "Is she asleep?" she asked, her voice a whisper. "Yeah." "Was she crying?" she asked, noticing the tear tracks. "Kids are emotional. Sad stories make them sad. It's normal," I said quietly. Isabella fell silent. After a long moment, she spoke again. "She hasn't slept this peacefully in a long time." Her voice held a weariness she probably didn't even realize was there. Looking at her, I suddenly saw that this all-powerful ice queen was also just a mother, worried about her child. "Maybe you should try spending more time with her," I said for reasons I didn't understand myself, instead of leaving everything to nutritionists and tutors. Isabella stiffened. She looked up at me, her eyes instantly flashing with that familiar cold defensiveness. "I don't need parenting advice from you." She turned and left, her back rigid. I shrugged. Some people just can't take good advice. The next few days as a play tutor went smoothly. My job consisted of playing games with Mia, telling her stories, and making her delicious food. Under my care, Mia visibly brightened. She talked more, smiled more, and followed me around like a little shadow, constantly chirping, "Buddy, buddy." Isabella, however, remained an iceberg. She left early, came home late, completely absorbed in her work. The only times we saw her were at breakfast and dinner. But strangely, she never had the kitchen make those nutritional meals again, tacitly accepting my rule over the kitchen. Every night, she would silently eat every last bite of the food I made. Sometimes, if I made extra, she'd even pack it up and take it to the office for lunch the next day. "Mrs. Gable's attitude toward me slowly shifted from suspicion to respect and gratitude. The whole villa started to feel a little less like a museum and more like a home. One afternoon, while Mia and I were building a sandcastle in the garden, my personal phone rang. It was Peterson. I stepped away and answered. "Boss, there's a situation that requires your attention," he said, his voice as efficient and respectful as ever. "Go on." A company called Vortex Dynamics has been maliciously targeting Vance Industries stock. They're also planting negative stories in the media about CEO Isabella Vance. My eyebrows shot up. Vortex Dynamics? Vance Industries? Isabella? An interesting combination. "Oh, and?" I asked, my interest piqued. The PR department at Vance Industries is fumbling the response. The stock has dropped significantly for 3 straight days, wiping out nearly $10 billion in market value. Our intel suggests that the man behind Vortex is an old rival of yours, Trevor Lancaster. Trevor Lancaster. I pictured a smarmy, slick-haired punk who thought his family's money made him king. I'd put him in his place a few times back in the day. I guess he hadn't learned his lesson. "Boss, should we intervene?" Peterson asked. "If we let it slip that Vance Industries has our backing, or if I personally meet with Ms. Vance, the rumors will evaporate. That idiot Trevor wouldn't dare go up against us." "No," I said flatly. "Boss." Peterson sounded surprised. "She can handle this little mess on her own," I said, watching Mia happily playing in the sandbox. A smile touched my lips. If she can't, she doesn't deserve to be CEO. More importantly, I didn't want to disrupt the current, amusing dynamic. However, I added, my tone shifting, "This Vortex Dynamics, it's an eyesore." "Your meaning, sir?" Peterson immediately understood. "I don't want to see this company on the market anymore," I said, as casually as if I were commenting on the weather. "Understood," Peterson replied, a thrill of excitement in his voice. "Mission accepted." I hung up and went back to building sandcastles with Mia, as if the phone call that had just sealed the fate of a multi-billion-dollar company was nothing more than a minor interruption. What I didn't know was that from the second-floor study, behind a curtain, Isabella was watching my every move through a pair of binoculars, her expression growing more and more confused. The next evening, Isabella came home exceptionally late, her face a thundercloud. At the dinner table, for the first time, she had no appetite. She just listlessly pushed the food around on her plate. "Trouble at the office?" I asked casually, while putting some chicken on Mia's plate. Isabella shot me a cold glare. "Don't ask questions that don't concern you." "Alrighty then," I shrugged. The next day, I was having breakfast with Mia, as usual. The financial news was on TV. Vance Industries stock took another massive hit yesterday, closing below the critical support line as market panic sets in. The crisis stems from a hostile short-selling campaign and negative media blitz orchestrated by competitor Vortex Dynamics, plunging Vance Industries into the greatest crisis in its history. The anchor reported in a somber tone. Mia didn't understand, but I could see the worry etched on Mrs. Gable's face. Just then, Isabella came downstairs, dressed in a sharp power suit. She looked like she hadn't slept, with faint dark circles under her eyes, but her gaze was sharp, filled with the desperate resolve of someone cornered. She didn't even glance at the TV, just grabbed a piece of toast and headed for the door. "Isabella," I called out. She stopped and looked back at me. "In a hurry to go down with the ship?" I asked, slowly sipping my coffee. Her eyes flashed with fury. "What did you say?" I said, "The only things waiting for you at the office are a bunch of panicked employees and a stock price in freefall." "You can't do anything," I said, putting down my mug. "Why don't you sit down and have a proper breakfast? Who knows, by the time you're done, the problem might have solved itself." "What do you know?" My nonchalant attitude infuriated her. "You're a useless parasite who only knows how to live off others. You have no idea how brutal the real world is." "You're right, I don't." I nodded agreeably. "I just know that sometimes the solution is much simpler than the problem." She was speechless with rage. Just then, her phone rang. It was her executive secretary. She answered impatiently. "What is it? Did the world end?" On the other end, her secretary's voice was a high-pitched scream, a cocktail of joy, shock, and utter disbelief. "Ms. Vance, it kind of did. Vortex Dynamics. They're gone. They went bankrupt." What did you say? Isabella's voice shot up several octaves, her icy face a mask of incredulity. Just now, 3 minutes ago, we got word that a mysterious overseas fund bought out every single share of Vortex Dynamics, and then they immediately announced the company was being dissolved, liquidated. Trevor Lancaster is having a complete breakdown. Our stock is rocketing. It hit the circuit breaker. Ms. Vance, we won. Her secretary was screaming incoherently. Isabella was completely stunned. She stood there, phone pressed to her ear, her mind a total blank. Acquired? Dissolved? In 3 minutes. How was that possible? It defied all laws of business. Not even a god could pull something like that off. Her mind raced, trying to find a logical explanation for the impossible. And me? I just picked up a piece of toast, spread some jam on it, and handed it to Mia. Time for breakfast, kiddo. Then I looked up, meeting Isabella's wide, shocked eyes, and gave her a small smile. See? I told you. Sometimes, the solution is much simpler than the problem. The dining room was silent except for the ticking of the clock on the wall. Isabella stood frozen, the phone still pressed to her ear. Her secretary was still babbling on the other end, but she couldn't hear a word. Her mind just kept replaying what I'd said. Sometimes, the solution is much simpler than the problem. She looked at me, the man she'd always considered a parasite, now calmly feeding her daughter toast, as if the corporate earthquake that had just rocked the industry had nothing to do with him. No, it's impossible. Isabella immediately dismissed the absurd thought. To acquire and dissolve a $10 billion company in 3 minutes? The kind of capital and power required was terrifying. Only a handful of legendary global consortiums could pull that off. And Cole Anderson? On what grounds? His parents and their moderately successful companies? Impossible. Absolutely impossible. It had to be a coincidence. A massive, mind-boggling coincidence. Isabella took a deep breath, forcing herself to calm down. She hung up the phone, her face resuming its usual mask of composure, but deep in her eyes, a seed of doubt had been planted. I have to go. She threw the words over her shoulder and left in a hurry, not even looking at me again. I knew she was going to the office to confirm the news, or rather, to find an explanation, any explanation that would soothe the chaos in her mind. I just smiled. Some things are more suspicious the more you try to explain them. It was much more fun to let her guess, to wonder, to have her entire worldview thrown into question. Buddy, what's wrong with Mommy? Mia asked, nibbling on her toast. Your mommy, I said, ruffling her hair, has gone off to save the world. The next few days, Isabella was even busier. With Vortex Dynamics gone, Vance Industries' position was stronger than ever. Contracts and partnerships flooded in. She threw herself into her work with a manic energy, as if trying to drown out the thoughts of that coincidence. She came home later and later, sometimes not at all. We barely saw each other. Then, one day, I got an unexpected call. Cole, it's me, Daisy. A voice as sweet as honey came through the phone. Daisy Miller. I remembered a cute girl from college with pigtails and 2 adorable dimples when she smiled. She came from a mega-rich family that owned a restaurant empire, but her passion was cooking. Now she was a semi-famous food blogger and private chef. Back in school, she used to follow me around everywhere, calling me her bestest buddy Cole, and I could never shake her. Daisy, long time no see. I chuckled. What's up? I saw your post. You're back in the States, and you didn't even tell me, she chirped excitedly. Where are you? I'm coming to find you. I've been working on a bunch of new recipes I have to make for you. Before I could even answer, I heard a flurry of activity on her end. She was already packing. This girl was a whirlwind. I'm kind of busy right now. It's not a good time, I said, trying to be diplomatic. What could possibly be more important, she pouted. Are you hiding a secret girlfriend? I don't care. You have to send me your address. If you don't, I'll go stake out your family's estate. I sighed. She was definitely crazy enough to do it. And really, what was the harm? I was just the play tutor. It had nothing to do with Isabella. So, I sent her the address to the Greenwich Mansion. Half an hour later, a pink Porsche 911 drifted perfectly into the driveway. A girl in a white sundress with long, flowing hair jumped out, practically radiating sunshine. It was Daisy. Her eyes lit up when she saw me waiting in the garden, and she flew toward me like a butterfly, throwing her arms around me in a massive hug. Cole, I miss you so much. She smelled faintly of vanilla. I awkwardly patted her back. Okay, you're a grown woman now, calm down. Nope, she squeezed tighter. You have no idea how boring it's been without you. All the other guys are so fake. You're the only real one. Right in the middle of our tug of war, a black Bentley silently glided up the driveway. The window rolled down, revealing Isabella's emotionless face. She was home unusually early. Her gaze, like two X-ray beams, shot straight through me and landed on Daisy, who was still clinging to me for dear life. The air instantly froze over. Daisy felt the chill and let go, turning to see what was going on. When she saw Isabella, she blinked. Wow, she's gorgeous. Cole, is this your girlfriend? Daisy asked, with her typical, oblivious innocence. Before I could answer, the Bentley's door was shoved open. Isabella stormed toward us, her face a blank mask, but her eyes held a brewing tempest. She stopped right in front of me, ignoring Daisy completely, and stared at me. Who is she? My friend from college, Daisy Miller, I said simply. Friend. Isabella's lips curled into a freezing smirk that said, Who do you think you're kidding? Montserrat. Vance, Daisy said politely, extending a hand. I'm Daisy Coles. Isabella cut her off. Cole, she said, her voice low but carrying an undeniable command. A word. Inside. She spun on her heel and marched away. Huh. Daisy looked completely lost. I shrugged, told her to wait, and followed Isabella inside. The moment we were in the living room, Isabella whirled around. I warned you not to have any foolish fantasies, she seethed, her voice tight with fury. What is this? Are you parading another woman in front of me to get my attention? Cole, your tactics are pathetic. I had a laugh at the absurdity of her accusation. Isabella, are you confused? First, Daisy is my friend. It's perfectly normal for her to visit me. Second, why would I need to get your attention? Aren't you overestimating your importance just a little? She was so angry she could barely speak, her chest rising and falling rapidly. If that's all, I have a guest to entertain, I said, turning to leave. Don't you dare. Isabella lunged forward and grabbed my wrist. Her hand was cold, but surprisingly strong. Cole, she said, staring at me, her voice trembling with rage. You are in my house, and you will follow my rules. I don't like strangers here. Tell her to leave. On what authority? I frowned. On the authority that I am your employer, she snapped, her voice rising with a note of, was that overbearing and hurt. You. Before I could retort, Mia, who had been playing quietly with blocks on the floor, let out a sudden, terrified wail. Our argument had scared her. We both froze. Isabella's face went white. She instantly let go of me and rushed to her daughter. Mia, don't cry, Mommy's here. But Mia pushed her away, reaching her little arms out to me, sobbing. Buddy, hold me. In that moment, I saw Isabella physically flinch. Her eyes, for a split second, went dim with defeat and a profound, undeniable pain. I walked over and scooped the crying girl into my arms, gently patting her back until her sobs subsided into little hiccups. The living room was deathly silent. Isabella stood frozen, watching her daughter cling to my neck, her face pale, her lips pressed into a thin line. Daisy stood awkwardly in the doorway, her usual bubbly demeanor gone, replaced by a look of confusion. She could feel that something was very wrong. Cole, Daisy said quietly. Maybe I should go. We can catch up another time. No. It was Isabella who spoke. Her voice was hoarse, but it had regained its usual iciness. You're Cole's friend. Your guest. Please stay for dinner. Then she turned and walked upstairs, her posture looking strangely defeated. Daisy stared at me, completely bewildered. What was that? I sighed. That was your invitation to a home-cooked meal. You're in for a treat. Dinner was strange. I cooked a feast, and Daisy ate with gusto, her cheeks stuffed like a chipmunk's, showering me with compliments. Mia ate happily too. Only Isabella, at the head of the table, seemed to be eating without tasting. She was silent, but whenever she looked up and saw me laughing with Daisy, her expression would darken. After dinner, Daisy wisely made her excuses and left. As she was leaving, She leaned in and whispered, "Cole, that Ice Queen is totally into you." The way she was looking at me, I thought she was going to vaporize me. The jealousy is practically a physical presence. I just shook my head and laughed. Into me? Impossible. She just couldn't stand not being in control. Of Mia. For a control freak, losing control is the ultimate torture. After Daisy left, I found Isabella still sitting at the dining table, a half-empty glass of red wine in her hand. "What's up?" I asked. "Sit," she said, gesturing to the chair opposite her. "Ye set." "Cole." She swirled the wine in her glass, the crimson light playing on her face, making her look almost vulnerable. "We need to talk." "About what?" "About Mia," she said, putting the glass down and looking me straight in the eye. "What? What did you do to her? Why does she rely on you so much?" This was the second time she'd asked me that. "I didn't do anything," I said, leaning back. "I just treat her like a kid. I play with her, I cook for her, I listen to her. Unlike some people who treat her like a KPI to be managed and scheduled." My words hit their mark. Her face paled. "I don't." She started to object, but her voice lacked conviction. "You don't." I pressed mercilessly. "When you come home, do you ever ask her if she had a good day? Do you know her favorite toy? Or which vegetable she hates? Have you ever read her a complete bedtime story? All you've ever given her are your cold, rigid rules. Yes, you gave her the best of everything money can buy, but that's not what she wants." Every word was a hammer blow to her heart. She looked down, her long eyelashes casting shadows on her cheeks, hiding her expression. After a long silence, she whispered, so quietly I almost couldn't hear, I don't know how to be a mother." Her voice was filled with a rare, genuine vulnerability. I was stunned. It was the first time I had ever seen such raw emotion from this woman. The Ice Queen had a soft spot after all. "Then learn," I said, my voice softer now. "Starting tomorrow, come home an hour earlier. Have dinner with her. On the weekend, cancel everything and take her to an amusement park. Try to understand her, not just manage her." Isabella looked up at me, her expression complex. "Is it really that simple?" "It's that simple." She was silent for a long time. Finally, she nodded. "Okay, I'll try." After that night, Isabella actually changed. She started coming home on time, sometimes even early. She would awkwardly try to feed Mia, usually making a mess. She would sit on the floor and watch me play with Mia, though she was still too hesitant to join in. That weekend, she canceled all her meetings, changed into jeans and a sweater, and announced we were going to Six Flags. She would try to drive. After scraping the side of the garage 3 times, I finally took the wheel. She sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window, looking more tense and out of place than I had ever seen her. At the amusement park, she frowned at the screaming crowds and colorful rides. It was obvious she had never been to a place like this in her life. When Mia grabbed her hand and begged her to ride the carousel, her entire body went stiff. But she got on, and when the music started and the horses began to move, Mia's delighted laughter filled the air. Watching her daughter's radiant smile, Isabella's frozen face finally thawed, a tiny, genuine smile gracing her lips. I stood watching them, a strange warmth spreading through my chest. This wasn't so bad. Then, a harsh voice shattered the moment. Well, if it isn't Ms. Vance. Fancy seeing a big-shot CEO like you slumming it with the common folk." I turned. A sleazy-looking guy in a loud Hawaiian shirt, his hair slicked back with too much gel, was sneering at us. Behind him were a few thuggish-looking cronies. I recognized him. Trevor Lancaster, the former owner of the now-defunct Vortex Dynamics. Small world. Trevor's appearance instantly dropped the temperature back to freezing. Isabella's smile vanished. She got off the carousel and pulled Mia behind her, her eyes like ice chips. "Trevor, you still have a nerve to show your face." "Why wouldn't I?" He laughed, a nasty, brutish sound. "I'm unemployed. Nothing left to lose. Unlike you, Ms. Vance, riding high on your success. A success you built on my corpse." He was loud, drawing the attention of other parkgoers. "What are you talking about?" Isabella frowned. "Don't play dumb with me." Trevor's face twisted into an ugly snarl. "You think I don't know? Vortex Dynamics disappears overnight, bought and dissolved. Who else has that kind of power? You're ruthless, Vance. A real viper." His accusations A complete reversal of the truth made Isabella's face pale with anger. I had nothing to do with that. Right, he cackled. Can't even admit it. Fine. Today, you're going to learn that Trevor Lancaster is not a man to be trifled with. You destroy my company, so I'm going to destroy what you care about most. His malicious gaze fell on Mia, hiding behind Isabella. Isabella's expression changed to one of sheer terror. She clutched Mia tighter. What do you want? Trevor, I'm warning you. If you touch one hair on my daughter's head, I will have you erased from this world. Threats, he sneered, emboldened. You think I'm scared of you now? I have nothing. What do I have to fear? Boys, grab the kid. His thugs moved forward, menace in their eyes. The crowd screamed and scattered. Park security was on their way, but they were too far away. Isabella backed away, clutching Mia, pure panic on her face. For all her corporate power against thugs like these, she was just a woman. And me? I just stood there, watching it all unfold like a bad play. Trevor saw me standing off to the side and assumed I was paralyzed with fear. Hey, look, it's the CEO's boy toy. Scare, pretty boy? Figures. A leech like it would be useless in a real fight. He lunged, reaching for Mia, and in the split second before his grimy hand could touch her, I moved. No one saw it happen. There was just a sickening crack and a scream that sounded like a dying animal. Trevor was on the ground, his wrist bent back at an impossible angle, white bone piercing through the skin. Arg! My hand! My hand! He shrieked, writhing in agony, sweat soaking his ridiculous shirt. His thugs froze, their bravado evaporating at the sight of the bloody, brutal injury. I casually shook my hand, as if I just flicked a bug. I walked over to Trevor, crouched down, and whispered, so only he could hear. Originally, I was just going to let you go bankrupt, but now I've changed my mind. You touched someone you shouldn't have, and you said something you shouldn't have. My voice was quiet, almost gentle, but to Trevor, it was the sound of damnation. He stared at me, his body trembling uncontrollably. Oh, who the hell are you? I didn't answer. I stood up, pulled out my phone, and dialed Peterson. He answered on the first ring. Boss, Peterson, I said, my voice devoid of emotion as I looked down at the whimpering wreck on the ground. You have 30 minutes. I want the Lancaster family and their entire enterprise erased. And I mean that in the most literal sense of the word. There was a 2-second pause. Then Peterson's voice, filled with a terrifying, ecstatic zeal, came back. As you command, my lord. I hung up and turned to face the utterly stunned Isabella. She was holding a terrified Mia, her beautiful eyes wide with shock, fear, and a confusion so profound it looked like she was breaking. She stared at me as if she'd never seen me before. And she hadn't. Not this part of me. In her world, I was a harmless, lazy fool. She had never seen this side. The ruthless, decisive, and brutal side. She whispered, but no more words came out. I ignored her and gently took the trembling Mia from her arms. I held her close, murmuring, "It's okay, Mia. Buddy's here. You're safe." Mia's shaking slowly subsided. The park security and management finally arrived, looking completely overwhelmed. They saw Trevor on the ground, the terrified thugs, and me, standing there radiating cold fury, and had no idea what to do. "Sir, what happened here?" the manager stammered. Before I could answer, a man in a crisp black suit and gold-rimmed glasses pushed through the crowd, followed by a team of equally sharp-looking individuals. He ignored everyone else, walked directly to me, and, to the utter astonishment of every single person there, bowed a full 90 degrees. "Boss, I apologize for my tardiness. I'm deeply sorry you and your family were disturbed." It was Peterson. Behind him stood the core members of my executive team, each one a titan in their respective field. And right now, they all stood behind me, heads bowed, silent and respectful. The entire amusement park fell silent. Every eye was on me, including Isabella's. She looked at me, surrounded by this group of elites. She saw the legendary apex predator of Wall Street, Mr. Peterson, acting like a humble servant in my presence. Her brain simply shut down. Her entire worldview, built over 20-plus years of hard work and ruthless ambition, shattered into a million pieces. Parasite? Boy toy? No ambition? All the labels she had stuck on me now seemed like a cosmic joke. "Boss, the Lancaster situation has been handled," Peterson reported in a low voice. "What are your instructions for this one?" I glanced at Trevor, who was now pretending to be unconscious. My voice was flat. "Break his other hand. Then make sure he never speaks again." "Yes, sir." Peterson gestured. Two of his men moved forward and dragged Trevor and his thugs away like sacks of garbage. The entire operation was clean, efficient, and terrifying. I held Mia and turned to leave this now boring place. "Cole." Isabella's voice stopped me. It was shaking. I paused and looked back at her. She stared at me, her normally cold, imperious eyes now a maelstrom of confusion and turmoil. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Finally, in a hoarse, complex whisper, she asked the question that had been eating away at her for weeks. "Who are you?" Her question hung in the air, laced with a vulnerability I'd never heard before. I looked at her shattered expression and almost laughed. Who was I? I was still Cole Anderson. You were just too busy looking down on me to ever actually see me. I didn't answer her. I just held Mia a little tighter and said, "Let's go home." Then, flanked by Peterson and my team, I walked away without a backward glance, leaving Isabella standing alone in the middle of the amusement park, lost in the wreckage of her own reality. The car ride back was suffocatingly silent. Isabella sat across from me, her eyes fixed on my face, as if she could unravel the mystery of who I was just by staring hard enough. I ignored her, focusing on peeling an orange for Mia. "Buddy," Mia whispered, "why is Mommy looking at you like that?" "Because," I said with a smile, "Mommy just found out that Buddy is secretly Superman." "Wow, Superman." Mia's eyes lit up. Across from us, Isabella's mouth twitched. Back at the villa, she finally cornered me. She had Mrs. Gable take Mia for her bath, leaving us alone in the vast, silent living room. "Cole, we need to talk," she said, her tone dead serious. "About what?" I asked, sinking into a plush sofa and pouring myself a glass of water. "About why I'm secretly a billionaire, or why I can snap a man's wrist with a flick of my own." My casual tone made her face flush with a mix of anger and embarrassment. "Why does Mr. Peterson call you boss?" she asked, getting straight to the point. "Because I am his boss," I said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "That's impossible," she shot back. "Peterson is the founder of Ethelred Capital, the most powerful private equity firm in the country. Behind the scenes, She stopped, the words dying in her throat. She remembered that the true owner of Ethelred Capital was the biggest mystery on Wall Street. A horrifying, ridiculous thought began to form in her mind. She looked at me, her voice suddenly dry. "Ethelred is yours." I shrugged. The simple confirmation hit her like a physical blow. She stumbled back, grabbing the arm of the sofa to steady herself. Ethelred Capital, the financial empire that made titans of industry tremble, that moved global markets with a single memo, belonged to Cole? To the useless parasite she had thrown away? The reality was more jarring than being told the sky was green. Then, vortex dynamics. "Oh, that," I said lightly. I had Peterson buy it and dissolve it. They were being noisy. It was interrupting my sandcastle time with Mia. Isabella just stared, her face blank. Shock was no longer a strong enough word. This was the complete and utter annihilation of her perception of reality. She looked at me, a man she thought she had all figured out, and realized she was nothing more than an ant in his world. All her pride, her hard-won success. It was all a joke. "Why?" she whispered. "Why did you hide it from me?" "Hide it?" I laughed. "Ms. Vance, have you forgotten? You were the one who broke off our engagement. You were the one who looked down on me from day one. Why would I ever feel the need to prove myself to someone who held me in such contempt?" She was speechless. He was right. From the very beginning, she had been wrong. She had judged him, slapped a label on him, and never once bothered to look deeper. A wave of regret, so powerful it was nauseating, washed over her. She looked at his handsome, lazy face, and her heart clenched so tightly it hurt to breathe. She had missed it. She had thrown away a man she wasn't even qualified to stand beside. She had personally pushed away the greatest treasure in the world. "So," Isabella's voice was choked with tears, "you stayed here. It was only because of Mia, wasn't it? What else?" I asked. Did you think it was for you? Don't flatter yourself, Ms. Vance. That was the final blow. Two perfect tears traced paths down her cheeks, falling from those famously icy eyes. It was the first time I had ever seen her cry. Not silent tears, but the wrenching sobs of someone consumed by grief and regret. She just stood there, crying like a lost child. I'll admit, a small part of me felt a pang of pity, but a much larger part felt a grim satisfaction. So you look down on me? How does that feel now? I didn't comfort her. I just let her cry. When her sobs finally subsided, she looked up at me, her eyes red and swollen, her voice a desperate plea. Cole, can we go back? Go back. I smiled, a cold, sharp thing. Back to when you were pointing your finger in my face, calling me worthless? The color drained from her face. I stood up, looking down at her. Isabella, every choice has a price. You made yours a long time ago. Don't expect a refund now. Without another word, I turned and walked upstairs, leaving her alone in the cavernous living room to be swallowed by her regret. After the truth came out, the atmosphere in the villa became strange. Isabella was no longer the imperious queen of her castle. Around me, she was cautious, hesitant, almost subservient. She started serving my plate at dinner, clumsily peeling fruit for me, quietly bringing me a cup of tea while I watched TV. The look in her eyes changed, too. The ice and contempt were gone, replaced by a complex storm of regret, awe, and a fiery intensity one couldn't quite name. I ignored it all. I was still living my life of leisure, my world revolving around Mia. As far as I was concerned, Isabella was just Mia's mother, the woman who'd signed my paycheck. Nothing more. Then came Mia's 4th birthday. I was up at dawn, baking a gigantic strawberry shortcake from scratch. I had the entire garden transformed into a fairy tale kingdom, complete with balloons, streamers, flowers, and a troupe of professional clowns. Mia, dressed in a princess gown I bought her, ran around the garden, her laughter echoing like tiny bells. Buddy, look, a castle. Buddy, the balloon flew away. She held my hand, chattering away, her face alight with pure joy. Isabella stood off to the side, wearing a simple white dress instead of her usual armor-like suit. She watched us, her gaze fixed on me, filled with a tenderness and a hunger she probably didn't even realize was there. That afternoon, Daisy showed up with a massive gift box. The moment she saw me, she tried to launch herself into my arms. Cole, happy birthday. She got the date wrong. Again, I held her at arm's length. It's Mia's birthday. Oh, right. Daisy giggled, handing the box to Mia. Happy birthday, little one. This is from Auntie Daisy. Mia happily took the gift. Thank you, Auntie Daisy. Daisy cooed over how cute Mia was, then promptly linked her arm through mine. You're so good with kids, Cole. You're going to make a great dad someday. Before I could untangle myself, I felt a familiar, ice-cold stare from across the lawn. Isabella was glaring at Daisy's hand on my arm like she wanted to set it on fire. The air crackled with jealousy. Daisy felt it too. She just winked at me and snuggled closer, the little troublemaker. Cole. Isabella's voice was a low growl. She stalked toward us, each step deliberate. I need to speak with you. About what? I asked, annoyed. It's private. Can't it wait? Isabella's face was a mask of thunder. She took a deep, shuddering breath. Then, she did something that stunned everyone into silence. She strode forward, ripped Daisy's arm off mine, grabbed my tie, and yanked me toward her. I stumbled forward, our faces inches apart. I could see every one of her long eyelashes, see the wild, possessive storm raging in her eyes. Cole, she hissed, her voice shaking with a raw, desperate anger. I will not allow you to be that familiar with another woman. I raised an eyebrow. And who are you to stop me? I'm... Her eyes darted back and forth, searching for a reason, any reason. Then, a look of fierce resolve crossed her face. She stood on her toes, and she kissed me. Her warm, soft lips pressed against mine. The world stopped. Everyone in the garden froze. Mrs. Gable dropped a tray of drinks with a crash. Daisy's jaw dropped open. One of the clown's red noses actually fell off. And Isabella, the untouchable ice queen, had her eyes squeezed shut, kissing me with a clumsy, desperate force. Her lips tasted of expensive wine and her own unique, cool fragrance. It was a kiss of pure, reckless abandon. It didn't last long. Before I could even process what was happening, she pulled back as if she'd been electrocuted. A deep blush spread across her cheeks. She wouldn't look at me, wouldn't look at anyone, just stared at the ground like a child who'd been caught with her hand in the cookie jar. I touched my lips. They still tingled. I looked at this flustered, blushing woman and found the situation deeply amusing. The ruthless CEO, flustered by a single kiss? Yep, I started to say. She snapped her head up and shot me a glare that clearly said, "If you laugh, you die." Then she turned and practically fled back into the house. "Oh, my God," Daisy stammered. "Cole, she kissed you. You saw that, did you? Everyone saw that," Daisy said, her eyes wide. "That was so possessive and kind of hot. Your ex-fiancé has a dark side, Cole." I ignored her, watching the spot where Isabella had disappeared, a thoughtful smile playing on my lips. This woman was getting more interesting by the minute. Later that night, after I'd tucked me into bed, I found Isabella sitting on my bed. She was in her silk pajamas again, pretending to read a book, but her eyes kept darting around the room. "Something I can help you with?" I asked, toweling my hair dry. She jumped to her feet like a startled rabbit. I came to apologize." "Apologize?" I raised an eyebrow. "For the kiss." Her face went crimson. I didn't mean to. She stammered, looking like she was about to cry from embarrassment. "You just what?" I asked, slowly walking toward her. She backed away until her back hit the wall. I planted a hand on the wall next to her head, trapping her. I leaned in close, my voice a low murmur in her ear. "You just got jealous." My breath on her ear made her shiver. "I did not," she insisted, but her flickering eyes gave her away. "No," I chuckled, using my other hand to gently tilt her chin up, forcing her to look at me. "Then why did you kiss me?" She stared into my eyes, her mind going blank. All her defenses, all her pride, crumbled. All she knew was that she couldn't stand seeing me with another woman. All she knew was that she regretted letting me go with every fiber of her being. All she knew was that she had to have me back. "Because I'm in love with you." The words came out in a trembling whisper, but they hit me like a thunderclap. I'll admit I was stunned. I'd suspected, but to hear her say it, it was something else. Looking into her terrified, hopeful, tear-filled eyes, I felt something in my chest shift. "In love with what part of me?" I asked, my voice dangerously soft. "The lazy part? The worthless part? Or the part that? Spend your money?" Each word was a knife twisting in her heart. The color drained from her face. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice thick with pain. "I know how I treated you. I know it's too late. But Cole, I really truly..." I cut her off by crushing my mouth to hers. This was not the gentle kiss from earlier. This was a kiss of conquest, of punishment. I plundered her mouth, stealing the air from her lungs. After a moment of shock, she responded, her arms wrapping tightly around my neck, kissing me back with a desperate, frantic heat. It was like two wounded animals finding solace in a storm. When we finally broke apart, gasping for air, our foreheads were pressed together. "Isabella," I said, looking at her swollen lips and dazed eyes. "Remember this. You started it. So from now on, we play by my rules." After that night, our relationship shifted into a strange, new territory. We weren't employer and employee anymore, but we weren't exactly a couple either. I offered no title, and she asked for none. We were a secret, hidden within the walls of the villa. I'd pin her against the wall for a searing kiss as she walked by. She'd blush and push me away, then melt into my arms. The iceberg was melting fast. One day, I was in the kitchen, and Isabella came up behind me, wrapping her arms around my waist and resting her head on my back. "Smells good," she murmured, then stood on her toes and kissed my cheek. This kind of ambush had become her specialty. I smiled, about to turn and retaliate, when my phone rang. It was Peterson. His voice for the first time was grave. "Boss, we have a problem. Go on. We're under attack." My eyebrows shot up. "An attack? On Ethelred Capital? Who is it?" "We don't know," Peterson said, a note of frustration in his voice. "Their methods are unconventional. They seem to have limitless capital and are shorting our public companies in a suicidal, kamikaze-style assault. Our stock is plummeting." "Interesting," A cold smile touched my lips. It had been a long time since anyone had been a worthy opponent. Can you trace them? Negative. They're elite hackers. We're trying, but don't bother, I said calmly. Pull your team back. They're outmatched. Boss, I'll handle it personally. I hung up. Isabella looked at me with worried eyes. Is everything okay? Just a minor nuisance, I said, ruffling her hair. Keep an eye on this for me. I'll be right back. I went to my study and fired up the supercomputer I had custom built. Code scrolled down the screen in a waterfall of green. My fingers flew across the keyboard, a blur of motion. Peterson was right. They were good. They'd built a digital fortress. But against absolute power, clever tricks are just that. Tricks. 10 minutes later, I stopped. A single red dot pulsed on the screen, pinpointing a private island in North America. I sent the coordinates to Peterson with a simple message. Wipe this island off the map. Done. I stretched, shut down the machine, and went back downstairs as if I'd just finished a game of Minesweeper. In the kitchen, Isabella was frantically watching the pot, a smudge of soot on her perfect cheek. Thank God you're back, she said, relieved. I thought it was going to explode. I chuckled, came up behind her, and gently wiped the smudge from her face with a towel. You did great. I kissed her forehead. She looked up at me, her eyes shining with pure adoration. Is it fixed? Yep. I knew you could do it, she beamed. Looking at her, so full of trust and love, my heart clenched. Maybe it was time to make this official. Just as I was about to speak, the front door of the villa exploded inwards. A flood of men in black tactical gear stormed in, their assault rifles instantly trained on us. Their leader was a blond, scarred man with the eyes of a hawk. He grinned, a cruel, predatory thing. Mr. Anderson, my employer would like a word. Isabella's face went white with terror. She instinctively threw herself in front of me, her arms spread wide like a mother bird protecting her nest. Who are you? You can't have him. The man with the scar looked amused. Touching, but pointless. He raised his weapon, the laser sight painting a red dot between her eyes. Move, or you die first. Isabella was shaking, but she didn't move. She looked back at me, her eyes filled with a fierce, desperate love. Cole, run. Get Mia and run. I don't regret any of this. She closed her eyes, ready for the end. But the shot never came. There was only a soft thud and the sound of a body hitting the floor. She opened her eyes to a sight she would never forget. I was standing right where I'd been. The scarred man was on the floor, a single silver dinner fork embedded in his forehead. The fork that had been in my hand a second ago. The other mercenaries stared at me, their faces masks of pure terror. I slowly walked out from behind Isabella. I shrugged off my jacket, tossing it aside, and then, one by one, undid the buttons on my cuffs. I rolled my wrists, producing a series of sharp cracks. I looked at the terrified soldiers, and a cold, bloodthirsty smile spread across my face. Your boss made a mistake. He made this personal. And for that, I'm going to tear every single one of you apart. It wasn't a fight. It was a slaughter. When the last man fell, the living room was a charnel house. I stood in the middle of the carnage, without a single drop of blood on me. Isabella was huddled by the kitchen door, staring at me with wide, terrified eyes. Not scared of me, scared for me. The red haze of battle faded. I took a deep breath and walked toward her, my shoes sticking to the floor. She flinched as I got closer. I reached out a hand to touch her, and she instinctively recoiled. My hand froze in midair. My heart sank. So, she was afraid of me after all. I gave a bitter smile and pulled my hand back. I scared you. I turned to leave, to give her space, but a trembling hand caught the hem of my shirt. I looked back. Isabella was looking up at me, tears streaming down her face. No, she choked out, shaking her head. I'm not scared of you. My heart is breaking for you. She launched herself forward, wrapping her arms around me in a desperate embrace. Why did you have to go through this? Why? She buried her face in my chest, sobbing like a child. My stiff body slowly relaxed. I wrapped my arms around her, holding her tight. It's over, I whispered. It's all over. I promise. No one will ever hurt you again. I was making a promise to her, and to myself. I would build an empire so vast and so powerful that nothing and no one could ever touch her or Mia again. That night, Peterson's team sanitized the villa until it looked like nothing had ever happened. The private island in North America quietly vanished from all satellite maps. We moved to one of my other properties, a secure, sprawling estate that was more like a fortress. Life returned to normal, but the last barrier between us had been obliterated. One evening, she came into my study while I was tying up some loose ends. She put a cup of coffee on my desk and wrapped her arms around me from behind. Still working. Almost done. Cole, she murmured, resting her chin on my shoulder. What? What are we? I stopped typing and spun my chair around, pulling her onto my lap. What do you think we are? I asked. She blushed, looking down and fiddling with a button on my shirt. I don't know. You've never asked me to marry you. The last words were a tiny, hopeful whisper. My heart melted. I tilted her chin up. Isabella Vance, I said, my voice serious. Will you marry me? Her eyes lit up, then instantly filled with tears. She nodded furiously, as if afraid I'd take it back. Yes, yes, I will. I smiled, pulling a velvet box from my desk drawer. Inside was a diamond that shone with the light of a captured star. Well then, Mrs. Anderson, I said, taking the ring and sliding it onto her finger. Welcome to the rest of our lives. The moment the ring was on, she collapsed into my arms, crying tears of pure, unadulterated joy. We were married the next day. Standing outside the courthouse, she stared at the marriage certificate in her hand as if it were an alien artifact. Cole, are we really married? Want me to help you remember? I said, pinning her against the wall and giving her a long, deep kiss. Mrs. Anderson, she blushed and playfully hit my chest. Stop it. In the sunlight, her smile was brighter than anything I had ever seen. I knew my life of doing nothing was officially over. I found something far more compelling. Loving her, protecting her, making her the happiest woman in the world. And if anyone ever had a problem with that, well, I'm Superman, remember? End.